All right, so we'll get started. Thank you for joining us, guys. Welcome to Origin and Causes webinar titled The Sky's the Limit Using Drones in Claims Investigations. My name is George Costandi, and I will be your moderator today. I just wanted to go through a couple of quick points with you first. By now, you should have clicked onto the link so that you're signed in and your attendance is accounted for so you can receive a completion certificate after the webinar. We're going to be doing a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, so please feel free to submit your questions via the text box under the webinar screen. We'll try to get to as many questions as possible in this hour. If we don't get to your question in the webinar, we promise to follow up with you after the fact to make sure your questions are answered. All questions will be anonymously addressed unless you want a shout out. Just write your name and company if you wish, and then your question and comment. The webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website, on LinkedIn as well, and our YouTube page. So please feel free to pass them on to your colleagues or use them in any team meetings if you wish. We'll be sending each of you a completion certificate in a follow-up email. For those who are not signed into the webinar under their own name but are attending within a group, please email me at webinar@origin-and-cause.com, and I'll have one of the completion certificates made up for you and for the group. Just submit your name and email address and contact information. At the end of the webinar, when you close the GoToWebinar window, the program is going to prompt you to answer 5 quick questions about the webinar, and we would love to hear your feedback. Essentially, what we're asking for is if you could rank the speaker, if you could rank the content, and provide us any other feedback that you may have. Also, if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, you can email our team questions to webinar@origin-and-cause.com. And of course, join in on the conversation on Twitter via hashtag #OCWebinar. Okay, let's get started. Now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. Today we have Darren Keuhl joining us. He's an advanced drone operator specializing in forensic investigations utilizing drones. He is a member of the advisory committee for drone use for the Ontario Association Chiefs of Police. He specializes in aerial 2D and 3D forensic scene mapping. He is a licensed private aircraft pilot, and his technical background is having a level 3 traffic collision, being a level 3 traffic collision investigator and a level 4 collision reconstructionist. So without further ado, please welcome Darren Keuhl.
Great. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. We're very excited to bring this webinar to you. We have had a lot of input and requests from clients and folks in the field requesting us to put together an information session and this webinar to give you information on how we can utilize this exciting tool, which is relatively new in the field. However, it's evolved dramatically. Really excited to speak to you on this topic, as I've been using drones for a number of years, and we've seen the use of drones in the insurance industry. It's just exploded. We found drones to be a very efficient tool to be utilized by adjusters, contractors, and lawyers alike. Our current mission is to examine and document the scene for physical evidence and to preserve scene forensically through systematic digital video and photographic collection of that evidence. Often the evidence and the forensic investigations that we're looking into, it will assist you in the process of determining the cause of the loss, and also can be used to corroborate physical evidence with the information obtained for the insurers. Another key function of our drone use in claims is for contractors and appraisers for site assessments and scoping for rebuilds. It places the need to have the investigator on ladders, it replaces the need to put our investigators up on ladders or higher off ground, and keeps personnel from having to enter hazardous locations, which I'll address later on in the webinar. Drones provide a platform for which a large area, elevations are saving time, and drones are also changing the way we collect data to do our business. All the clients that we've had and utilize the drones for, using our drone services are blown away by the benefits. They are really thrilled with how quickly we get the intel back to the information back to them, and how we document the evidence of a scene, and how we help appraisers and estimators. It's a very fast, inexpensive way for an investigator to use the tool. I believe there are many people in the industry that have not yet tapped into the use of the drone, and that's what we're going to touch on here. The sky is the limit. We're finding every day a new use for the systems that we're flying for the claims adjusters. Okay. We typically get involved in the following types of claims and claim investigations. We're finding structural inspections are our priority. Flying in hazardous areas and places that are difficult to reach, such as attics, crawl spaces, and tunnels. Creating hazards for the investigator. We're trying to mitigate those hazards by placing a small system in and around locations that would otherwise put a person into danger. Natural disasters and catastrophe situations such as floods, forest fires, tornadoes, and wind damage. Again, there are multiple hazards at these locations, and by putting a machine where a man or woman doesn't have to go, we're mitigating the risk to the investigator as well. Scenes, fire scenes, explosions, large and small scale. Drones are able to get into areas again where we can't put people, where the site may be too dangerous to put a person into. Water seepage and leakage investigations we'll get into shortly. We'll touch on thermal inspections and how we're utilizing current technology to be able to detect what you might not otherwise see with the naked eye. Before we dive into things, I'd like to give you a quick heads up or overview about new legal requirements that relate to using drones in your claims investigations with regards to Transport Canada drone regulations. Okay, currently the regulations that Transport Canada govern drone use and drone pilots will expire as of June 1st. Things like special flight operation certificates will cease to exist for the most part, and the new regs kick in as of this Saturday, June 1st. Up until now, a typical drone operator was restricted from flying closer than 30 meters to people or building structures. It's very restrictive when dealing with a typical claim scenario. If you have a commercial property that has a water infiltration on the roof, for example, you need to fly that roof line. It may be virtually impossible to not get within 30 meters of people. We have to get closer, and to do that, it might not be possible to get the shot with the current regulations. But as of June 1st, we'll talk about that in a second. With the new regulations, there will be a lifted restrictions for certain drones to fly within 5 meters of people, which really narrows down the radius around a structure. And if you can imagine flying a system in an urban or built up area, downtown Toronto, for example, downtown Ottawa, or any other urban centers, we've had, you may have the luxury of locking down that area with security personnel, but you may not. Therefore, deploying a drone with the old regs might not be possible. You might not be able to get your shot. But as of June 1st, next week, the new requirements kick in with Transport Canada that place restrictions on the drone operators, separates basic operators from advanced operators. It also dictates what drones can fly within that lower rated or closer to than 30 meters of people and up to 5 meters of people. So if the drone operator you hire to conduct an investigation for you is not properly licensed, or following the regulations that are stipulated by Transport Canada, what's important for you as a client to know is that you may be held responsible, as well as the operator, if any laws are broken with regards to the Canadian aviation regulations. It's up to you to know that when you're hiring somebody, to make sure to ask for that operator's advanced pilot certificate. They have to carry it on their person, and they have to be able to produce it to law enforcement as well while flying at a scene, because they may be challenged. It's important to ask if they are actually operating a safety assured drone approved by Transport Canada. Ask to see their Transport Canada pilot certificate from Transport Canada. They will produce it. Ask what other similar operations that the pilot may have experience in. Not all drone operators are equally experienced. You must be careful to screen the individuals that you are going to hire to fly a site, as the liability rests again with you. You may be challenged by the Ministry of Labor at a site if you hire or contract a drone operator to fly that site, and the fines could get quite steep. Okay, as I said, you've got to know who you're hiring, or you're going to expose yourself to not only risk but fines, as indicated. It's up to you to confirm your drone pilot. Talk about the jobs that they've flown, and they may have a resume or a dossier, and it's important that you're going to get the right person for that job. If there's an issue during the flight that causes damages at a scene or a site, the operator and their client, you, may be implicated, as I indicated, as liable. Ultimately, liability rests with the corporation who hires the drone operator, bottom line. Many claims that you are investigating or participating in, be it a contractor, a lawyer, or an adjuster, will likely be in a built-up area. This is so important as a drone operator. An experienced operator won't have an issue operating in a built-up area with hydro lines, tall buildings, provided they can do it legally and safely within the confines of Transport Canada. However, an inexperienced pilot, and I've seen this occur, will have difficulty in this type of environment. You get winds, tall structures, interference, and if they lose control of the drone, again, a liability could occur, and the company that hires that drone pilot will be held liable and at risk. Dollars and cents it comes down to. Fines, and they're listed under the Canadian aviation regulations. Fines are up to $5,000 for a pilot operating without a drone certificate, either be it advanced or basic. Fines up to $5,000 for flying an unregistered or unmarked drone at a site. Fines up to $5,000 for flying where you're not supposed to or not allowed. Several statutes might come into effect here, or laws. So you may have local bylaws, you may have city local bylaws restricting drone flights. You may have Trespass to Property Act occurring. You have to get permission to overfly properties by property owners. So these are things you want to be able to ask your drone pilot. If you're not getting the answers that you feel you are applicable, then chances are that your pilot's very inexperienced. Not able to answer these questions shows that he's not compliant or not ready to fly a job for you. Drone pilots have to carry their valid drone pilot certificate in advanced controlled airspace, which is very detailed. I understand there's people from the States that are on the webinar. So down in the United States, it's called a Part 107. You can look up the FAA rules and regulations as far as that goes. But here in Canada, most specifically, we're governed by Transport Canada. So it's very critical that you know who you're hiring when you put a drone up in the air on one of your sites. There are many companies out there that are operating currently without proper credentials. We hear it through the grapevine. They're taking the chances, and you certainly are taking chances by hiring individuals such as this. So provided that the laws or these are the specific ones, like not operating with a drone certificate, flying unregistered drone, and breaking local laws, those are the big ones that are going to get drone pilots into hot water. So it's imperative you as the client just ask, and if any question comes about, your local law enforcement agency would be able to answer questions on the Transport Canada laws. Okay, so that sums up the regulations. It's very dry, but I think we've discussed it here. I think it's very important that you, the client, are aware. It's like a buyer beware clause almost, that you feel that you're getting a product, and then all of a sudden you're you're getting somebody that's misrepresenting what they can do for you. So just ask the right questions. Again, if in doubt, when in doubt, call Contact Transport Canada. They'll be able to answer the questions for you as well. I'd like to get right into structural inspections, which we're seeing a high demand or a high request for drone flights for structurals. Thank you. Structurals can be extremely hazardous, especially when there's been a failure. I love this slide. It really depicts, as you can see, a very bad idea. My wife asked me not to give this little story from last summer when I was on my roof. Again, didn't require a drone to be up there. However, I had to put some shingles on my roof, and my ladder gave way, crushing my finger. And of course, I didn't get a lot of sympathy there. So I know the guys in the audience are probably agreeing with me. However, it can happen to the best of us. So didn't require a drone, but that was not me up on the ladder with the hi-ho. However, it was something similar. And again, the point being, contractors will encounter hazardous situations when scoping out repairs. Many times, often, they have to go up 1-2 stories, climb scaffolding, ladders, access roof lines, look at ice dams, chimneys. I need to get the picture. I've got to get up there. They could be in a cherry picker. You've got to follow the right laws. You have to have the right courses to be tied off, etc. So anytime you leave boots on the ground, off the ground, and you go up, you're now entering a risky situation. Some of the most prepared individuals can still be at risk with equipment failure. Not saying that you're never going to climb again. Drones are the end all be all. However, they are a tool in your toolbox to get you up to a higher location to examine a structure. Is the mission worth the risk? That's always a question you have to ask yourself. So what's the best tool for the job? And is it too risky to climb out onto a roof line to get that picture, or go up in a cherry picker? Or would it be better suited to put a flight system up, i.e. our drone systems? Contractors, highly recommend call the drone operator. Again, once you've screened your drone operators and found the right individual for the job, the drone can be flown very close to structures, to the roof lines and otherwise inaccessible areas to determine damage and assist in the evaluations for the rebuilds. Drones can be flown up to a maximum altitude of 400 feet above the ground for overall site evaluation. Construction firms have recently started implementing professional drones in routine safety inspections. Not only is this a safety measure clever for the use of drones in constructions, but it's very time effective as well. Most commonly, health and safety risks are in hard to reach areas that normally construction workers would otherwise have trouble locating. Contractors have begun implementing professional drone operators to pinpoint and locate potential issues in a far more efficient manner, reducing the risk of climbing and gathering the needed site information in a fraction of the time. What we've seen also with the jobs we've flown, the adjusters and contractors both really love us flying the sites for them in their claim process. Here's the most common feedback we've been getting from individuals. The fast turnaround of the inspection. Generally on site, once a flight is completed, we'll pull the data from the drone with the SD and we can pop it into a laptop and review the video and or the digital images on site to make sure that we've captured exactly what you're looking for. Again, there's no delay in the post-processing of the data. Massive cost reductions versus traditional inspection methods. Time is money. We can typically survey a building in 1/8 of the time, minutes, and get the data that would otherwise take a lot longer to have collected from terrestrial photography. We can assess more claims in a fraction of the time. We could substantially reduce the cost of inspections and the claim shelf life. We can improve claim settlements using enhanced inspection intelligence, higher resolution digital imagery from the drone system, from the cameras. We improve the customer experience as we can custom fly the site for you. We will specifically sit down and produce a flight plan as required from various altitudes, heights, and various angles as needed for the view for the claim. The added benefit of this is obviously perspective. It's not just relying on the terrestrial photography as I indicated. The perspective of the flight, we fly orbits, low and high, over flights very, very low to roof lines. We fly grids that are systematic, and we are able to get in tight on HVAC and especially roof systems that may have caused an issue. Customers are amazed at the clarity of our digital photos and videos that we collect. Our experienced team not only collects photos, but we're trained to examine the scenes and capture evidence that an untrained operator may otherwise miss. I've brought 31 years of investigative experience with myself, my eye, and my team. We've gotten pretty good at looking at a scene and assisting the determination or the factor that caused an issue and brought us to the scene itself. All right, information that the drones can provide you. What can we get? What's the data? What are you looking for? The software we use collects more than just pictures and videos of a scene. It's incredible. It's incredibly high quality images, up to 4K if needed, cinematic. Not that we're shooting a movie, but you certainly are not getting a grainy 720 photo or video. So the images are extremely high quality. The drone deployment. We get to those hard to reach places, areas that assist adjusters in understanding the cause of the loss and verifying if there's coverage or not for a claim. Also accurately documents damage to help contractors and estimators with measurements for rebuild. Every roof inspector, claim adjuster, and contractor can do the job from the safety of the ground. The software that we are using and that is available to be used provides precise measurement and additional data to assist with the scoping and providing repair or rebuild estimates. We automatically capture roof imagery in minutes. We can fly a systematic grid of a site to later render and recreate the scene, both in 2-dimensional and 3-dimensional modeling. I'll explain that in a minute. Once our teams capture the aerial imagery of the structure, creating a roof report is very quick if that's something that you're looking for. Roof reports, if that's part of the claim, provides accurate square footage, roof features, pitch, surface area, slope, certainly assists with the rebuild. The technology we deploy at a scene is the same technology law enforcement's been using to recreate collision scenes. The technology reproduces our scenes for our clients in a manner that's unsurpassed in this industry. It's highly defined, again, straight, as I mentioned, 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional modeling. And we are able to sit down and capture that scene in time. All right. From the data that we collect from a flight, from the grid flown or any oblique digital photos, we can process the images into a high resolution digital model for review. We can zoom in, zoom out, we can rotate that digital model for a site assessment or site review with a client at your desktop. This allows users to share. We can allow users to share an export file. We can email this to you. We can share the data in the cloud. We can hand it to you on an SD card, whatever format is best suited for your application. Contractors can obtain accurate measurements, as I indicated, volumetrics and area calculations, slope, very, very accurate with the software that we're using. It's been extremely valuable. And again, the software is very new, again, being used, like I said, in law enforcement and within fire agencies, but we're now seeing this being used here in claims. Excuse me. This digital model that we're collecting, again, it's you want to capture that evidence so that it's not lost. Once the site is turned back over, and if you haven't been able to reproduce it in this type of a format, once the excavation begins, the evidence is gone. So that was the biggest, one of the biggest conversations we've had with our clients, is the fact that it's imperative they capture the scene as is. So with this software that we're deploying with, we're doing exactly that. Certainly in litigation, once you if a claim ever went there, we can reproduce this data as a time capsule of what the site occurred when we were conducting that flight. So the faster you can get us to a scene, the faster we can collect evidence, the faster we can preserve that evidence as well. 3D mapping, quickly touched on this, but again, it's very helpful and useful in large losses. We can move the model around, and we can, again, review it off-site. Again, in the large losses such as construction claims, in the large losses such as construction claims or situations when insured has a liability exposure, they want thoroughly documented cases. They want that evidence. So in case the claim goes to litigation, again, by capturing this in the 3D model, we do exactly that. That's what you have. You have that site as it is, and 3 months, 3 years down the road, you can look back at this model and explain your case. Okay, a lot of questions and requests have come out about water claims and water damage, and how we can document that. And quite frankly, the thermal imaging has been a game changer for us. So thermal imaging, it can provide an investigator with an otherwise invisible data. A leak which would not be detected by the naked eye can be located by attaching a thermal image to a camera on the drone. The image you're looking at here, for example, it gives you a prime example of thermal imaging. In this image is of a thermal inspection. The water is penetrated, obviously, or if you look at the orange brighter area around the drain, it's penetrated the building, and it actually has been heated up from the heat inside the building. Scale on the right shows you the variant temperature grade. The purple is cooler and the orange is hotter. So in this, again, picture's worth 1,000 words. You can actually look where water's penetrating in and around that drain and getting roof penetration. So without that photograph, you would not necessarily be able to determine the scope of that damage. This is typical of the thermal imaging we'd be employing. I'm just gonna play a video of an inspection. It's conducted by an aerial inspection filming services, and I think it really captures the essence of a claim and how we utilize both thermal and building inspection. It's a very large scale structure, as you can see. There was report of water entering the interior of the structure, and a drone was employed to determine the area of penetration and the scope of the damage. So thermal imaging, it gives you a spectrum that enables the operator to determine where the hot spots and the cold spots are. So damages were visible by using this, and by using 3D modeling, it allowed us to recreate that building as it was. So we're not only using the 3D, we're using the thermal inspection. Some testing was done to look for the water penetration. And some of the findings. Sometimes it's not so obvious where the water travels. So with the thermals, we were actually able to determine the entry into the building and where it was pooling. This allowed the engineers to determine what what risks or how much damage had actually occurred. The entry of the water level was, or the entry of the water to the structure was located, and the interior damage was also located. The extent of this damage was extensive, obviously. Again, what's not necessarily visible here was the use of the thermal in the initial. It brought the structural engineers into the location that the damage was occurring, which was the water entry was far from where the damage was actually occurring. Okay, again, the use of a drone on this scope of a structure, again, 200,000 plus square feet, to physically inspect that structure would take a lot longer than it would to inspect with a drone. With the drone, the flight would be done in under a half an hour. The thermal would readily show you cold spots and narrow down the area that was required to do the repair. Okay. Origin cause can also put small drones into structures or small, hard to reach places. I've already talked about personnel risk and reduction of the risk of the personnel. Again, a site may not be accessible to an adjusters. So it may not legally be allowed to get into the structure. So we can fly small interior drones into those hard to reach places, areas of structure that would otherwise not be able to be accessible by contractors and adjusters to look at a site. This includes attic, crawl spaces, access tunnels, flooded basements, electrical hazards, and chemical hazards. Collapsed buildings can be flown to assess damage and discover where it would otherwise be unsafe to send an investigator or a structural engineer into. Risk to the attending team member is reduced by putting a machine where a person does not have to go. Time is saved and efficiencies are identified through the technology deployment. There will be sites that the Ministry of Labor will restrict entry to a structure. Deploying a drone to collect your evidence, for example, I've been at a fire scene, for example, which was extremely hazardous to get into. By putting a small system in, we're still able to collect data and capture that evidence at the scene without putting a person inside where it was unsafe to do so. We've had requests, again, this is using the new technology. Wind turbines have obviously been around for a number of years now, and I want to examine a case study on a wind turbine fail. I'll get to that in a second, but when you do have to actually get to this, a wind turbine and get up, again, once boots are off the ground, wind turbines, extremely high, it's very time consuming. You've got to actually visibly inspect the wind turbine by putting individuals on ropes. Using this inspection method, you can inspect 2 to 5 turbines every day with a traditional method of inspection by putting people on ropes, inspectors on ropes. Using this type of inspection methods, 2 to 5 turbines a day could cost as high as $1,500 to $2,000 for a single turbine inspection. Drones potentially could inspect 15 to 20 turbines a day at a faster inspection process, and less human intervention means that you can bring your cost down substantially, $300 to $500 possibly. Cost is inflated with time. This is a inspection of the Gestamp wind project in Punta Lima, Puerto Rico wind farm. This occurred in they were built in 2013, and the Hurricane Maria blew through in 2017. These wind turbine blades, they could not withstand wind speeds of greater than 209 miles per hour. So the question came in effect with the inspection: was it a manufacturer defect, or did they in fact delaminate based on the speeds of the hurricane? Puerto Rico had not been hit with a hurricane such as this magnitude since Hurricane Bob in 1991. These blades completely delaminated to the excessive wind speed specs, which exceeded the specs of 175 to 200 miles per hour. So what was found with this claim, it was approved as this was not a manufacturer defect, but it was discovered through the drone inspection that each blade had delaminated through they exceeded their maximum wind speed. It was a claim, and it was approved. It was a multi-million-dollar claim on these turbines. I'd like to now discuss some types of disasters an adjuster may be required to attend to assess a claim for a client. Often the case of natural disasters, adjusters will be overwhelmed with multiple claims in a short period of time. This will stretch your resources to the limit. Finding efficiencies in time management is essential for the investigator or for the adjuster. Drone deployment does exactly this for a site evaluation. It will generally not be what caused the damage, but will more likely be what is the extent of the damage for the assessment. All drones can be live streamed as we fly. This image, just a quick shot, gives you an overview. We've talked about CAT teams. There are some individuals in the audience here that are for catastrophe teams that get deployed to the Southern Islands, Caribbean, for example. This complex, it was insured. Extensive damage occurred, and they wish to document it, and they use drones. This was on the island of Antigua during Hurricane Irma again, 2017. Catastrophe teams, again, they're deployed to regions that are devastated by these natural disasters. We're seeing an increased use of drones with these teams that are deployed, and more relevant claim information, greater aerial perspective is provided by deploying with drones to these sites. Situational awareness of the damage is higher using drones. You're able to assess larger areas in shorter time. The scope of the damage is managed in a much shorter period of time. We're better able to assess the ground damage in real time for teams deployed to an area, and able to deploy resources to the areas that are needed by flying and overflying otherwise areas that you can't get into. More structures are examined per day with drones, and the collection of and the flow of information at large scale is done in a shorter time. This is an overflight again of the area from Hurricane Irma. If you could put it in perspective of a tornado, you can see this is a hurricane, obviously, but in our region with a tornado, for example, scope is massive. Drones will help the insurance inspectors improve safety by gathering the data in a more efficient manner and jumpstart efforts to rebuild the affected areas. In this specific video, area of Tortello on the island of Antigua was hit. 95% of the buildings were damaged. So if you're deployed to an area that has massive damage, you want to get that information collected as quickly as possible for rebuilds. Quickly, just like I mentioned using the drones at fire scenes and claims. We do both large and small scale fires. It could be structural, small residential, and or large block fires. So again, we've seen the request for both by deploying the drones. Thorough inspection will cover the following areas. A drone can get to your roof. Your roof should be inspected for damages from burning embers or collapse if heat was extreme. Roof structure may be compromised, so therefore you're not able to put boots on the roof, and you still need to get an inspection. There may be structural steel and or iron that's compromised. It could be up high, it been destabilized. We can fly danger close to the structure and collect the video evidence. Stucco, siding, concrete damage. Window frames melted, all require close-in inspection. Can't be done by boots on the ground. You'll have to get elevated. It may be, again, I indicated, we talked about climbing ladders. However, this applies. We can fly the drone within inches of the structure and get the information and the data that's needed. With regards to forest fires, so in 2016, we used this approach, drone deployment to assess property in the path of a huge wildfire in Alberta, Canada, which burned through the town of Fort McMurray. I'm sure several adjusters here well acquainted with this case study. One second, we'll queue up. I'm just going to pass them out as a commercial. We were able to review customers' claims in Fort McMurray just 2 days after the fires forced the town's evacuation, long before anyone could enter the site. It was possible to link pictures of the damage and cross-reference this with risk modeling and underwriting information. It was also looked at the status of the evacuations and how quickly the fires were spreading by monitoring social media. And this was an excerpt from a Zurich insurance adjuster. Another excerpt was taken. Drones were used this way. They're essentially an extension of other types of visual assessments. For example, we regularly use a wealth of information about sites where there may be claims to do remote assessments long before we ever visit the site. This was from a straight farm adjuster. So the deployment of the drones, as you can see, the scope was massive. The adjusters and the insurance companies were overwhelmed by claims. So by utilizing drones, it just reduced the scope of investigations. Just quickly, want to wrap up, talk about some of our equipment. We're using state-of-the-art equipment, high resolution 4K video, and highly responsive aircraft. They are Transport Canada rated for advanced operations, cinema grade, very maneuverable, and able to fly virtually any site as required. Again, smaller drones are able to get into those hard to reach places. We are able to utilize those as well. We're using rugged all-weather inspection RPASs or drones, thermal imaging sensors. You've seen some samples of those. Zoom payloads, again, highly responsive, all Transport Canada rated for advanced operations. I'd like to just a quick recap. Some of the benefits of utilizing the drones. We can access hard to reach places, hard to reach locations, mitigating risks. They're cost effective. We can utilize infrared. We can reduce the risk to ground personnel on scene. We can assess in a larger area in a shorter period of time. We can provide you with real-time data and transmit that from the site or reproduce at the site for your inspection and review. That's my end of the webinar. I'd like to turn this over to George to just talk about what we have to offer here. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. So this is the Q&A period, guys. So make sure you're submitting your questions via the text box on the bottom of your webinar screen. As I'd mentioned in the beginning, the webinar is being recorded and will be posted on our website and LinkedIn page, YouTube pages. So please feel free to pass it on to colleagues if you want to use them, even in team meetings. We hear a lot of insurers and independents and even law firms saying, hey, you know, we just had a a branch meeting or whatever, and we played the webinar. So please feel free to use that. It's a tool on our website readily available for you to use. Now, if we don't get to your questions before the end of the conclusion of this webinar, we will make sure to get to you and answer your questions personally. All questions that are being submitted are anonymous. And so here we are. I'm going to start pulling up the questions here. So the first question is, how close to the scene does the operator need to be? Can you inspect a loss in Barrie from Toronto?
No, that's an excellent question. Excellent question, actually. And I didn't touch on this. You actually have to be visual line of sight. You have to see the drone. So the entire time the drone is operated, the pilot has to keep it within visual line of sight, and you fly with an observer to maintain safety. So as per Transport Canada, that would be beyond visual line of sight, and no, that could not occur.
That would be more military grade, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like You're not going to fly something that distance. So yeah, good question. But the short answer is visual line of sight. The operator has to be able to see the drone during the inspection.
Okay, great. Next question. Do drones have GPS capabilities?
Yes, actually, we fly with GPS. That actually, when the GPS, or if the GPS goes offline, it actually becomes a bit of a bucking bronco to fly. So again, they are all operated via GPS. It maintains stability of the flight system. For pinpoint accuracy, you can fly what's called an RTK, or real-time kinetic measurement, more specifically for surveying, et cetera. But yeah, the drones are flown via GPS.
Great. Next question. Can you speak to drone availability by geography? Available today, where in Canada?
Yeah, we again, depends on who you're hiring. There are drone operators across Canada. George is going to talk to Origin and Cause and the services we provide here, but we're readily available to go to any location. If you do not use Origin and Cause, again, if you utilize a drone operator within your location, there are many good advanced operators across Canada. Again, just be mindful of their credentials. Make sure that they're the right person for the job and that they actually can do what they say they can do.
Yes. Darren is based in Ontario, but can travel coast to coast. The cost of an investigation is an hourly rate. It's a $200 hourly rate, and plus expenses. So if you're flying him out to Vancouver or to Halifax, it would just be the hourly rate, similar to hiring any forensic expert, plus the expenses of travel and such. And if there's any mileage required, then there's a mileage rate, a typical mileage rate. So it's essentially like you hiring a forensic expert to take a look at a scene. It's the same model. There is no fee associated with using the technology that is included in our rate. Another question we have.
Yeah, we can travel on aircraft with it's checked in. So yeah, we can legally bring our aircraft with us.
Are flying drones over private property illegal?
If you don't have permission, yes, you are required by Transport Canada to have permission to overfly fly somebody's property. So you could be, if an individual flies a drone over private property, they could be liable to criminal code charges, mischief, trespass charges, and or Transport Canada charges under the Canadian aviation regulations.
And so someone that is, an advanced pilot such as yourself, you would know those restrictions, right?
Absolutely. We get the permissions prior to flying. If we don't get permissions to fly over property, we don't fly over property. So yeah, I touched on that early in the webinar. It's imperative to know who you're hiring. Individuals will try to cut corners and not have those proper certifications. So again, if you're going to hire somebody to fly a location for you, make sure they're the right person for the job.
Okay, next question. What is the typical or average cost for a drone inspection on a residential roof or exterior? Another similar question is essentially the same thing, but another example would be commercial building flat roofs.
Right.
So what would be the cost? I think at the end of the day, it's about how much time is incurred, right? So say for example, say we're not factoring in travel, but just simply the amount of time it would take to fly over a commercial building, a flat roof, to take a look at any sort of water infiltration or something. How long would such a deployment take?
That's an excellent question. When we get to a site, typically we meet with the adjuster or the contractor, whoever has brought us to the location. We do a site evaluation for safety, for hazards, for our flight plan, so that we know where towers are, we know where roof structures are that might be protruding, things that might cause us an issue with the drone. So again, we'll do that site inspection prior to. Once we have the area locked down and fly, it's not long, definitely under an hour. Depends on if it's a smaller structure, larger structure. Again, depending how much data you need, we would not be there for 5-6 hours. We'd be there. Depends on how big the structure is and how much data you want, but it could be anywhere from a half an hour to a couple hours.
Yeah. So a half hour is at $200 an hour is $100, and it can go up from there. So it certainly is very cost effective.
Yes.
How do you get Transport Canada approval fast enough for fires?
If you have the scene now, fires being a fire scene, well then you'd already be legally on the site by we'd be hired by the adjuster who is already legally on the site. So we actually don't require Transport Canada approval to be on that site. As an advanced operator, for example, urban area, for example, I flew one downtown urban center not so long ago. Ministry of Labor was there. The bylaw came by. We had the area locked down. I could fly it within 100 feet of people. I didn't need to go to Transport Canada. I actually, my certificate, I was following the rules and well within my legal obligations to Transport Canada. So I don't actually call Transport Canada.
Great. You mentioned cost and time savings. What is the added cost, if any, for using drones and the 2D and 3D software, or is this new stuff just a free tool like a camera use? So yes, it is free. It is included in the service. The pricing format is just the time. So say for example, you're just looking for video footage to document the scene. That obviously takes less time than to do a thorough mapping or grid mapping of any sort for 3D, to create a 3D model. So at the end of the day, what you would be charged is the time it takes for us to do those things. Next question. How does cold weather affect the drone's operations?
Oh, excellent question, actually. Yeah, drones have restrictions like vehicles, cars. So there's a limit, and it depends on the drone you're flying. You could fly, depend again, the drone you're flying, the one we're flying, we can fly down to minus 20 Celsius. Other systems, we can fly minus 30 Celsius up to plus 40 C, I believe. So it depends on the system we're flying, but it's the systems that we're flying have a very high tolerance.
Okay, great. Another question. As the adjuster, we retain the drone expert, and when the drone expert attends the location, and unfortunately an accident were to occur wherein the drone crashes and causes property damage, is there no availability for a hold harmless agreement between the insurer and the drone operator company available? I personally have not heard of such a hold harmless agreement. I think it really just depends on whether the pilot is or the firm is willing to sign over that, the ability to deal with the property damage in a typical way. It's a very good question, and I think I would address it case by case. So whoever has submitted this question, you can give us a shout and we'd be happy to discuss that. How does the quality of images compare to satellite and LiDAR images?
Oh, well, satellite, your typical area GIS, the resolution's okay. LiDAR would be far, again, another added, that's an added cost. LiDARs aren't cheap, trust me, to hang. There's a lot of research going in, and my buddies were just actually test flying one the other day. The image you get from LiDAR is superior, bottom line.
Great, okay. Can they be used for surveillance?
No. From again, even in law enforcement, when law enforcement puts up a drone to surveil a property, for example, they have to do it with a warrant. So a civilian, a private investigator would be held liable if they were to be putting a drone up and looking at a property. You'd need a warrant for that.
Okay. If you file an NOTAM in Class C airspace, which much of the population lives in, how quickly can you expect clearance?
Good question. The NOTAMs, notice a NOTAM is what that question refers to, is Notice to Airmen. They've been in decline, primarily with the new rules and regulations. You're responsible to fly within 3.5 nautical miles to an airport. You can't fly any closer. If you have to fly within 3.5 nautical miles of an airport, you have to get permission from the airport operator to do so. In the regions I fly, basically as it is now, they require a phone call to the tower and the operator of the flight center to get permission to fly in there.
So how quickly can you expect clearance?
Well, again, right now, it depends. It seems they're getting away with the NOTAMs, and it's more of a direct phone call these days. But you got to understand that if you're flying within Class C and you're too close to the airport, a lot of the software and a lot of these drones will not allow you to actually fly and launch. It really depends on the NOTAMs. But as I understand it, the NOTAMs are kind of going by the wayside, and it's now more of a direct phone call to the centers.
Okay, great. Next question: should the pilot I hire have their own liability insurance?
Highly recommend it. I personally carry a $2 million liability insurance to fly. It was mandated. It's currently mandated till Saturday. Beyond that, with the new regulations, it won't be. It's recommended by Transport Canada that you have liability insurance. However, again, you as an adjuster hiring a pilot, I highly recommend that you demand that pilot has liability insurance. Otherwise, they're on your insurance and you're liable.
Okay, have you seen drones utilized in loss control type situations such as preventative applications? Yes, certainly. It is a growing part. Yeah, so pre-loss
yeah,
versus post-loss applications. And you certainly can give us a call if you're looking, say an underwriting department or whatever department that looks at maintenance, or even if you're a risk management firm. You can certainly give us a call. We can provide you with an analysis and documentation of the status of a building or whatever risk you are looking at. Is there a database that you can put the location into and it will bring up a drone operator in the area who is approved and certified by Transport Canada?
Yeah, Transport Canada holds that database. Certainly you can look at a list of approved services.
Okay. Can the drones that you use be used to fly over structures near airports?
Kind of a generic question. Legally, no, you cannot overfly a structure that's occupied. You can fly within a distance of it, up to 30 meters currently, but no, not over an occupied structure.
Okay. How are you able to provide interior, i.e. attic inspections when you will lose visual line of sight?
It does. That's actually an excellent question.
Yeah.
Visual line of sight only is required outside for airspace, and that's for Transport Canada. So as a drone pilot, you are exactly thought of as that way with Transport Canada. You're a pilot of an aircraft. Interior, Transport Canada laws do not apply. So inside a structure, you do not have to see it. You can do it with the first person point of view camera on the controller, or you can do it with FPV goggles and fly it that way. We've done both. So yeah, good question, but Transport Canada rules don't apply inside a building. So you can do it beyond visual line of sight in a warehouse, structure, attic, crawl space.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for submitting your questions. There are several questions that have been submitted that we will follow up with you personally that we haven't been able to get to. I just wanted to quickly conclude by going through Origin and Cause's services and who exactly we are. So Origin and Cause is has been in business for 27 years. We're the largest forensic engineering firm, fire investigation firm in Canada with 16 locations and over 40 experts. Our offices from Vancouver, Victoria, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Ancaster, Windsor, Halifax, and Sydney. Our geographical spread has proven to be a huge strategic advantage for us. Our clients love the fact that we're able to get on site so quickly to control spoliation of evidence and to complete our investigations very quickly. So we're part of preferred vendor lists through for several of the large insurers in Canada, and are highly used by those that don't even have preferred vendor lists. Just want to go over our protocol. Once we receive a new assignment or a new claim, a lot of times they actually come in through our website. There's I'll show you the button and how to submit a new claim from our website. But when an assignment does come in, we arrange for an immediate site examination. We try to get out there within the same day, so long as there is no restrictions to be on site. We provide from the scene, we provide a verbal report giving a call to the adjuster or lawyer or risk manager, whoever it is, and provide a quick update as to what has taken place. We provide you with a preliminary report within 24 hours to advise you more formally as to what the status is, what is required, if there's any further examination needed, and then we'd follow up with a final report if requested. A lot of adjusters and lawyers are asking these days if in the event that a report is not required due to the fact that there is no sub-row potential, or if it's a dead-end investigation for whatever reason, do we typically just provide a verbal report or an email report? That's something that's popping up and becoming more common every day. And the answer is yes, absolutely. If the client requests for us to only provide a verbal or provide an email report, that is certainly their decision, and we're happy to provide you with the sufficient documentation to proceed in your best interest. So our services include fire and explosion investigation. We have a K9 unit that looks for accelerant detection. We have structural engineering services, electrical engineering services. Within the electrical engineering services, we have an alarm system analysis group. We have a mechanical engineering team, materials and metallurgical engineering, and that is pertaining to a lot of the water claims that we encounter, and focused a lot with the sub-row teams throughout the country. And we have a chemical engineering a group as well, and the drone services, as we have been speaking about in this past hour, and forensic litigation services. So we lead the industry in forensic litigation experience, with having been involved in over 1,500 legal cases and qualified as expert witnesses in all levels and types of Canadian courts. So this is truly a very popular service for us and for our clients to use. I encourage you to go on our website to find the resources that we post on a monthly basis. If you take a look right here, these two red buttons, send a new assignment and ask a question, they're most often utilized by our clients. If you want to send us a quick new claim, you click on that button, you input your information, and you hit submit. And within usually about 15 minutes, you'll get a response and have someone contacting you immediately to arrange for a site visit and ask a question is commonly used. You know, sometimes you don't know if you want to hire an engineer or a forensic expert, but you want to submit a quick question. We get to you right away, but with regards to that. Also, I encourage you to go on our website to the resources section of the website. You'll see articles that we push out on a monthly basis. They're very, very useful and simplified topics. They're technical topics, but they're designed to be very practical. Examples of articles include 3 strategic advantages of involving a forensic expert in a fire case, evidence to the contrary, statements versus physical evidence, and appliance fires and floods. And that concludes the webinar. We'll be sending each of you a completion certificate and a follow-up email. If you're in a group, please be sure to email us your name and contact information so we can send you a completion certificate. Email us at webinar@origin-n-cause.com. As soon as the webinar ends, there will be a web window that pops up on your screen asking you 5 feedback questions. We'd love to hear your feedback so we can improve for future webinars. Thank you very much and have a great day.